The economic impact of the UK Spring Statement. Welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's a thought.
When spring has sprung. In spring bluebells ring and birds start to sing, where all the bees will buzz and then fly and sting, as gardeners go outside and kids have kites on a string, and when a Chancellor appears and fails to grow anything. Yes, what a lovely spring that we have, and the spring statement is now upon us. Yes, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has set out her plans for the UK economy, and this was done in the spring statement. But you may have noticed that these self-imposed rules that she has set on public finances are non-negotiable. That means that basically it appears now that the economic growth that was originally forecasted at 2% is now being cut by the OBR to 1%. It seems to get a little bit worse. It doesn't end there. Certainly, when it comes to the welfare state, more money will be cut. And it also seems as though a lot of businesses are very concerned about what this means with the impact already of national insurance that's due to hit us. Well, I ask you, Mr. Pete, where do you think that we stand after this spring statement?
Well, Mr. Mark, what I think is we stand at least neck deep in some rather foul-smelling excrement. I think we're in trouble. I think
Yes.
This is the sort of statement which shows that you've backed yourself into a corner, or rather, you've chosen or had to have the wrong people supporting you. That you've got to have certain policies to keep them happy. Then you have to have other policies that actually address the issues, but they're not enough because of the political decisions I mentioned earlier. I mean, this is not looking good. Now, the spring statement is about fiscal policy, isn't it? It's not about taxes, but having said that, the increase in national insurance, so that increases in you're going to have increases in contributions to national insurance by businesses, it is going to be hitting in April. So that's not far away. So as we speak, it's the end of March 2025. In April, you're going to see this increase in the in the payouts that businesses have to give. So businesses who employing staff, especially if they've got large numbers of staff, they're going to be hit with a bigger bill. It's not looking good for growth, is it?
No.
This is. I would just say that, and also at the same time, you've got this big welfare reform where you've got I believe the figure is £3.4 billion in savings from welfare, which is going to gradually put in place, but by 2030 it'll all be done. And the Office for Budget Responsibility, who, look, I admit, are wrong on almost everything that they comment on, but let's just say what they said. They said it would increase relative poverty by 250,000 people. Now, yeah, okay, we can take their comments with a pinch of salt, but they're pointing in the right direction. It's not going to be good for a large number of people, however accurate they are. So this is a disaster of a statement, because it shows that this government has no idea how to sort out the problem. There's no innovative ideas. There's no bold vision that are being implemented. What we have is twisting and a turning and attempted to cope, having been painted yourself into a corner.
Well, I agree. In fact,
so I'm not being that positive.
I can see. What's worse is that the think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, has already stated that there is a good chance that economic and fiscal forecasts will deteriorate significantly between now and the autumn budget later on in the year. But here's another thing, because when you're making a statement of a kind, you have to also read the room. And what I mean by that is it's not just about Britain alone. It's also about the rest of the world. What Rachel Reeves has failed to recognize is that in her statement, she failed to note that Donald Trump had slapped on 25% tariffs on cars, car parts as well, going into
Oh
the
yes,
United States. That basically means any cars coming from not just the UK, of course, Europe and many other places, are going to be hit with those tariffs. Now, we have many engineering companies that supply parts to cars and many other things. So
yes,
that's one area of business that's gone. Now, I think that the other thing as well, which is probably the point about businesses. Now, businesses work in different ways. They are looking at the trends, not just in a given country, they're looking at it in a region and, of course, globally. A lot of manufacturers, in particular, are concerned about tariffs. But they're also concerned about the disruption in the economy, meaning what you want is some sense of growth. Because if you're going to invest, whether it be in plants, in people, in technology, and many other things, these are the sort of things that shape your opinions and where your dollar goes. And what I think that is slightly worrying is that the UK looks more uncertain than many other places. Now, here's the other
yeah,
thing. When Rachel Reeves set out her plans last year, this is in 2024, when the Labour Party actually won the election, she set out some very clear policies that she wanted to sort of boost the infrastructure. She wanted to boost the welfare state, etc. And now she's having to backtrack. She's having to cut. Now, I think that the other thing, which is most people believe, this is most economists, recognize that in the autumn statement, she's going to have to increase taxes. That's going to
yes.
again limit growth. And so what she's now doing is backing herself, to your point, in a corner. The other thing as well is when it comes to borrowing money, we're already at a record high. She can't borrow much more. The IMF is not going to
No,
allow that.
no,
And so what
no.
that's going to also mean is that there is very little maneuvering. So what can she actually do? Now, I don't have a problem with something that I think that she should have done last year, which is she should have actually cut some of the programs, the welfare state, where perhaps some, but not all, some individuals perhaps could have been encouraged to go back into business, go and take a job, get into the workforce. And clearly, what has been noted is that a high percentage of people, particularly young people between the age of 18 and 24, haven't actually been doing that. Now, that could have been done by maybe if you were taking that money rather than just giving them the money, encouraging them to say, well, we'll give you the money if you go on a training scheme or if you go on a particular program. So effectively, you're nurturing them back into industry as opposed to just giving them piles of money. And that's the thing that I think that should have happened. But unfortunately, she's lost that lever now because now she
Yes.
has to cut. Now, I wonder where this would also sort of fare when it comes to Europe. Now, the reason I highlight Europe is that Europe's not in the best of state either. Now, Germany's already up in arms, of course, by the taxes of the tariffs on their cars going into America, etc. So I can sort of see the challenges there. But some of the other countries like Italy, Spain, etc., they're not exactly in the best economic state. So trading with Europe is a little bit uncertain as well. So, Mr. Pete, I ask you, where can the growth come from? Because if you can't get the growth from Europe, and potentially tariffs could stop or block what's going on in America, where else can she maneuver? That's what I would be keen to sort of get
Well,
your thoughts on that.
I mean that yes. Well, that is the issue. But I would frame the question like this: how can you overall encourage economic growth? Now, of course, I recognise that international trade really boosts businesses, but most businesses, I think I'm right in saying, don't actually trade abroad. Most businesses trade within the country.
Small to medium size,
Um,
yes.
yes, yes. So what you want to do to boost the economy is reduce taxes. It's looking like she's going to have to put them up.
Yes,
Um, and you want to reduce regulation. Now, that would take, you'd have to be very brave to do that,
yes,
to reduce taxes. But that is what's needed. Now, that would mean you'd have to cut spending even more, and that's already unpopular. But questions on the ethics of doing that, cutting welfare, maybe cutting other spending, but welfare is the big one. People question the
Yeah.
ethics of that, but is it ethically right to spend money that you don't have and put the whole country into debt? That's another question, and I would say that is the overriding concern here. The Chancellor, is trying at the moment to convince the debtors, the other way around, the creditors
Yeah.
of the UK, people we owe money to, that we're going to balance, not entirely balance the budget, but balance income from tax with outgoings on day-to-day expenditure. That was her stated aim in this statement. So if that's an attempt to reassure people. I don't think he's reassuring people.
No.
So I just want to move on, just quickly comment about the politics of it, because there was I was talking about how people receive this statement, meaning businesses and other countries and people who are loaning to the UK. But what about people, the people of Britain?
Yes.
Well, there was a recent poll, 28th of March, performed by Ipsos, asking how Chancellor Reeves is doing at her job. Is she doing a good job?
Okay.
Well, 51% think she's performing poorly.
Hmm.
19% think she's actually doing a good job. So people either
Who are
think
those people?
she's or people think she's doing poorly. That's over 80% think think she's just not doing very well. And so that being the case, that's going to have a big impact on those local elections. We've got local council elections
Yes.
coming up, which for our listeners in America, a lot of our listeners are in America. I suppose it's roughly equivalent to the sort of governor elections. I know that's one person, where we're talking about a whole group of people, but it's the councils in Britain are roughly equivalent to the states in America. So those sort of elections are coming up with Nigel Farage and his Reform Party in
Yep.
the ascendancy, and this is going to get, if anything, it's just going to give a big boost to Reform, who are already ahead in the
They
polls.
are
So that's
already.
just a
Yes.
political comment on what the
Yes.
impact this statement is happening. People are not impressed.
No, and I agree with you that the council elections will be again once more a voice piece for the public to just air their
Yeah,
views. But here's the other thing: is that we already see that the general public are hit with costs. The energy costs are going up, and they're going to go up again. And so that's another thing. Food costs are going up, and that's another matter. So we're at a point where a lot of the people who are just really just trying to survive, there's only so much that you can keep taxing people on. And again, and what they're really looking for is some form of, as you said right at the beginning of the show, which is vision, ideas that can start to entice people with reassurance that we are a country of growth. And the only way to do
yeah.
that is to change the strategy. Unfortunately, I don't see the strategy that she's laid out, which pretty much is now baked in concrete, is going to actually help the nation. And I think that's the bit where I think that normally a country, particularly if you've inherited a debt, and they've already made clear, they claim that the Conservatives left a gap of 20 odd billion or more.
Yeah.
Now, as a result, whether you agree with those numbers or not, you recognize that, and that means that you need more flexible approach. And she
Yes.
hasn't taken a flexible approach. And
No.
that's the bit that I think is the
No.
worrying side.
Yes, there's been no real changes, and not reacting to that big announcement by Trump on the 25% tariff that you
Yes.
mentioned earlier on cars and car parts. Now, that needed a response. Now, what would you summarise there, Mark? Your regular listeners will know that I tend to give the religious input, and you have from my background, you give the business input. So I'll leave it to you to give a final um, analysis on what next. What needs to be done next in Britain if we're
I,
not going to just go down the pan.
the hell in a handcart, yes. Well,
Yes.
look, what I would strongly advise here, and I think most businesses are concerned, that we've got politicians who really are career politicians. They don't come from a business background. If you actually look at the cabinet ministers and most people who are elected in the Labour Party today, need to take advice from business people. And what I would say here is you need more flexibility. I think she's got to change strategy. I know that might mean
Yes,
swallowing a bit of humble pie, but if you just simply go with the approach of taxing people, it's only going to get worse, because then when you continue
yeah,
from there, you've already set out your stall. So what I would say is this. I would actually continue to cut the welfare state. I definitely agree. I think there's
I
too
agree.
much
Yeah,
wastage in that system. I think there's a lot that can happen with public service in that area, and it doesn't necessarily have to take place in a dramatic way. It can happen over a couple of years. But to me, I think that it's now is the time to cut on that side. But what I wouldn't do is, for goodness sake, do not put up tax. That would really stifle
yes,
growth.
yeah,
But what I
absolutely. Yeah,
would
you
say
need to be in a
is
position where
you
you don't put up
definitely
tax.
think
Yeah, sorry.
about
Yeah,
where you invest your dollar, or in our case,
yes,
the pound sterling. To me,
yeah,
what she should be doing is encouraging new businesses and also foreign businesses with incentive programs. Now, that
yes,
may mean that
yeah,
what you do is you start looking at corporate tax. You maybe sort of cut corporate tax, get people to realize that this actually is a country that does have a lot of talent, both in engineering, in technology, in many other industries as well, in agriculture and lots of, and so on. I know there's industry challenges in pretty much all
yes.
areas of our society,
No,
but to me, that's
yeah.
what she's got to do. She's got to change
Well,
strategy and move forward.
these sort of incentives, if you need somewhere to look, I understand is actually done in the filmmaking and the movie industry in Britain to encourage people there. So that sort of approach, not the exact approach, um, which has quite quite a few different incentives, um, could be taken to using that as a vague model. Yeah, I agree. You could try and bring in more business, which is what you need if you're going to have growth. The other thing we could have said is that, especially looking at what's happening will probably happen in the council elections and looking further into the future, we need a change of leadership to have someone
Oh,
leading the
yes.
country
Yes.
who has a business background,
Yeah.
maybe even the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage. Um, but we, Mark and Pete, just speaking for us both here, we're not necessarily wedded to one particular party. If Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party get the policies right,
Yeah.
we're going to support them.
Yeah.
So make the change,
Yep. I agree.
Rachel, if you're listening. So that's it from Mark and myself for this week. That's our statement on the statement by the Chancellor. What do you think? Let us know by making sure you subscribe to our podcast by going to markandpete.com. Just check you're subscribed. Subscribe if you haven't, and you can leave a comment on this. And in fact, every episode. And we'll catch you next time.